Hello and welcome back. Today we're taking a look at the Panasonic RS780S. Yes, a beautiful example of 1960s design and portability. So this is a beautiful reel-to-reel system with some built-in speakers. So I got this for parts. I think it was 20 bucks I got it for. And so the note there that we saw earlier said that it squeaks, so it might have a bad belt. So we'll look into that. I also really liked how this is piano keys. I've never seen that on a reel-to-reel in all three of the reel-to-reels I've ever seen. Now, another bit of damage is this output. The back panel is pretty cracked up, or at least the inputs are. And when I said it's portable, it really is designed to be portable because it has all of these boxes inside of it to hold all the cables you need. So when you're taking it somewhere, you got everything you need with you. So I got it plugged in and we can see it turns on fine. And hitting the play button, it definitely is squeaking. Not much power there. And you can hear it squeaking. It's barely turning the take up reel. So we got something going on there. And then I noticed this, and I think this is the original Panasonic take-up reel, which is pretty cool that it still has it. So that's, I mean, it does have a crack in it, but that's not bad. So even trying to help it along, it's just barely spinning. And doing some testing on the speakers, we can hear it's still crackling. So that's good that there is something coming out of the speakers, but it's a little crackly. So I'm going to put some audio as an input to this and just pass it through and see how the speakers sound. So I figured out I have to act like I'm recording it, and then it'll come through. And not getting much. Oh, there we go. And yeah, we got audio. It's a little crackly, but it actually sounds pretty good. Very loud at the left channel, not very loud at the right channel. So might have to look into that as well. So these speakers can just pop off pretty easily. They just have these sliding hinges. So we'll get those out of the way. And then to get this apart, it's pretty simple. You just take these 4 screws out of the front panel, and then this whole panel just comes off. And so once that's out of the way, we can get a better look at this thing. It's actually a pretty cool looking thing inside. It's got a weird system of changing the directions, but we'll talk more about that later. So you can see that that pulley on the left was really what was squeaking. That's what the motor's directly attached to, so the belt's just slipping on that. So we'll get it out of the box, and here you can see that little cubby for the power cord right there. So it's just a like glued together box there. And we got lots of goodies inside of this thing too. This loose screw that I never found a place for it to go to. I don't think it's even to this thing. And this little piece of plastic, which I think is a part of that broken RCA jack from the back. I'm gonna get a look of this from behind as well. Lots of wires going every which way inside this thing. And that's the motor on the right. And yeah, that's pretty bad. So I'm just gonna end up replacing all of those RCA jacks with something new. Now the belts actually seem pretty good, so I'm kind of doubtful that it's a belt problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove all of these wheels and just clean and re-lubricate them. So starting with this one on the left, to get to the clip on the back, I need to get this condenser out of the way. So I take the screw off and I'm trying to get it out. More in the way, try to move this out of the way, see if I can get it. And even when that's out of the way, it's still stuck. So I'm just gonna cut the wires off of this thing, just so I have to deal with them, and then I'll solder them on later. But that still was not good enough. It's now hitting the transformer. So with the transformer out of the way, I can finally move this condenser capacitor thing, whatever it is, out of the way. And that's the E-clip holding the pulley on the left. So we'll pull it out of the way, and miraculously it stayed with us. And we can now pull the wheel off. So that came out really easily. Now this is this weird teeter-totter thing that it uses to determine the direction. So another E-clip. One wasn't too bad either. And we can get this out of the way. So this weird slip clutch assembly thing needs to come out. So we can take this E-clip off on the back, and we can see it's still stuck on pretty well. So I thought maybe this clutch thing would be holding it on, but that didn't make any sense to me either. And so there's a few miscellaneous wheels in the way as well that we need to move. So we'll get that out of the way. And then I noticed this plate is also in the way. So this is what that teeter-totter was rotating off of. So we got that out of the way, and we could take the belt off. And we can still see it's still just stuck on. So I got a drill bit that fit that shaft pretty well, and I'm just going to hammer it out because I didn't see what was possibly holding it in. So enough hammering, and it did pop out. And so we can see it's pretty dirty in there, and that shaft has a little bit of rust on it, it looks like. So it rusted, kind of seized itself in there, and I think that's what was holding it all up. It was just that wheel was not spinning when the belt was pulling on it, so it was just slipping on the motor, and you can see it's pretty nasty in there. I don't know if it was necessarily rust or if the kind of old grease oil just turned into a glue. Probably some combination of both. So once I got that wheel cleaned, you can see it's just spinning perfectly fine now. So that was a pretty simple fix. So I debated just leaving this wheel because it seemed to be pretty fine. But I decided I better take it off and clean it just like I did the other ones. So I need to get this main circuit board out of the way because that's behind it is where the shaft is coming in. And someone's definitely been here before because we have a screw missing that wasn't from me. But we got another 2 screws off on that side, and we can leverage this whole circuit board up. And we can see the shaft there. We can also see a piece of string there, which is... I really do not want to break that because that would be probably a nightmare to try to fix. And I'm not even sure what it does. So I got the E-clip out of there, and now luckily I can just pull this one straight out. And might as well clean this giant flywheel as well. So there's no real instructions in the service manual as to how to take this apart, so I'm just removing screws I see and just seeing what works. So those loosened up a little bit, and now I need to remove this E-clip, and you can see it teleported down there. Not too far. And with that out of the way, we can get it a little more, but I needed to remove even more screws kind of on the far side of this thing, and I was finally able to get it leveraged up enough so I could get this big flywheel out. So the flywheel was really not too dirty, and none of these really were that bad. We can see these are just kind of plastic. That's too bad. It's not the highest of quality. This, I can kind of tell this was made to a price point. It's not the nicest thing ever made. And you can see this brass sleeve is starting to crack as well. So it's got a couple breaks in it, and I think that's catching on the brakes. And on this flywheel, it has this felt ring in the center. I have no idea what this does. It doesn't seem like it interacts with anything on this. So I will put it back, but just to clean it, I will remove this for now and re-glue it back. But yeah, I don't know what that does. And we can see some old grease on this ball bearing back there. So the glue was pretty well gone on this ring, so I can just pull it off. And my plan is to just glue it back on and clamp it so that those cracks are then glued back down, and hopefully that keeps it flat enough. That's the plan, at least. And so in order to kind of clamp this with some equal pressure, I made this square of zip ties that I'm going to put around it, and then I'll just cinch down the zip ties and see if I can get some good force around this so that when the glue hardens, it holds those chips down. So, got that done. We'll set that for a while. So I got some new grease on that ball bearing, cleaned the old stuff off as well, and now I gotta put this mess back together. Oh, what did you look at that? It's all put back together. It is a very good thing I record this so I can reference how to put stuff back together. So that seems to be spinning fine now, so it's all working, and All of the piano keys seem to be interacting fine with it, so nothing's catching up, so that's good. So I can start putting these wheels back in place, so I'm just putting a little bit of oil on the shaft. I don't know if those would have been grease or oil. I think they would have just been oil, though. And this is probably going to be controversial, but I'm just going to reuse the belts because they really are just perfectly fine. I think they were replaced sometime before the last, I don't know. They're not. There's no way these are 50-year-old belts from the original machine. I think this was definitely replaced. And we could see that with that missing screw that someone's been here before. And so I'm just going to keep them. I do clean them off, and you can see just they look perfectly fine. Although I did this at a later point, so they will look dirty for the rest of the video because time is convoluted. So we'll get this teeter-totter thing back on. So the idea behind this is like when the wheel spins counterclockwise, it'll turn the left wheel into the take-up because it has this weird belt thing that'll, pull it one way or the other. And then that slip clutch is just sliding on the belt. I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it would work very well. Now, when I was putting that wheel back on, I noticed that the brake pad things are just gone on this side. So I decided to remove this whole assembly just to clean it up and put it back together easier. So I took the springs off, the E-clip teleported out somewhere. And then when I was trying to take it apart further, I saw that it was still attached via that string. So we found out what that string is attached to. It's attached to the braking system. So I did not want to mess with that. So I just kept it in place, put it back together, and just filing off some of that old glue. And like I said, I think someone's been here before because I bet there used to be a brass sleeve on this wheel as well. The left wheel that someone removed because it probably was doing the same thing. So I'm going to replace these belts. Oh, and not the belts, but the brakes. And I think that when that brass sleeve was removed, it was really rough on that plastic still from the old glue there. And so I just chucked it in a drill and just polished that plastic down with some Brasso to try to take down any of the sharp edges, just so that these new felt pads don't just get demolished like the other ones did. Now, I'm not positive that what was there was felt. I'm pretty sure it was, but if someone knows what they actually use for the braking material in this stuff, then let me know and I can try to swap it out. But I'm pretty certain it was just felt. So the glue's all dried on this, so I'm putting this back in, and it seemed to have held down those edges pretty well. But you can hear there's a bit of a noise being made. So it's silent going in reverse, but going in forward, it's making a noise. And that noise is definitely being generated by this brass ring. And so we can see that that glue did not hold. So, inspired by the guy that fixed this before me, I'm just going to remove this brass ring. So I wish I would not have glued this back down because that was a real pain to remove. And then I did the same thing where I just chucked it in a drill and polished it down with some Brasso to try to do my best to remove the glue and get it nice and smooth. Now the next problem I noticed is that this speed changer is not working. So it's supposed to be able to be changed when you're playing it. So this has a solenoid in it that's locking it up, and for whatever reason, it's not being activated when it's being played. So I'm trying to get it to activate via this leaf spring, and I finally got it to activate there, so now it slides fine, and now it's working. So I'm guessing that this is just oxidized, so just a tiny amount of deoxit in that area to get it all cleaned up, and I'm using a little Q-tip to just clean it up a little bit better. And so now that I've deoxidized that, you can see it seems to be working flawlessly now. So it's releasing that solenoid every single time. And the way it's actually changing the speed is it's moving the belt onto different parts of this pulley, which is actually pretty cool. So on the biggest part, that's the fastest speed, and then the tiniest part of the pulley is the slowest speed. So I think it's now time to put some tape on this and see if it's working. Hopefully the heads work and that I haven't been putting all this work in for nothing. And yeah, we're getting some audio out of it. little crackly, but that makes sense. I haven't deoxidized any of the potentiometers on this thing yet. That speed change is working good. So yeah, I think we got ourselves a winner. So here I'm deoxidizing the potentiometers. I'm doing a terrible job of it in this shot. I did take this apart further and deoxidize them better because I don't think this actually did anything. I didn't get any of it inside the potentiometer, but I didn't film me doing it correctly. And then while I had this sideways, the cover on this VU meter just fell off. So it definitely needs some new tape on it. So just using some packaging tape to hold it down. And we'll address the bad foam behind those in a bit. And then something else I noticed was that the tape meter is not working. So you can see it's not moving at all. It's just kind of spinning there and not catching. So I'm not certain what's wrong with it. I've not seen any of them really break like this. I've had one break where the gear is bad, but it doesn't look like any of the gears are bad here. So it's a couple screws to get this out of the way, and then a few more and I can get that counter assembly out of the way. And sure enough, as soon as I removed it from the housing and just kind of messed around with it a little more, it just started working fine. So now it's just counting up tape perfectly fine. I don't know if it was kind of stuck on something, but yeah, that seems to have fixed it. So I gotta love those fixes. So I did clean it as well, and I put a little bit of oil on the top of those gears, the kind of the counting ones. So yeah, seemed to have fixed it. So now we can address the inputs and the outputs. So we have those 4 RCA jacks on the top. So we have 2 inputs and 2 outputs, and then those channel 1 and channel 2. Those are the speaker outputs. So that's what the speakers that it came with will plug into. So I got that out of the way and I got it desoldered, and now I just need to take this lower assembly off. So this is what the speaker switch and the speakers and the monitor headphone jack all attach to. So they all come apart pretty easily. They're just all bolted on with these pass-through nuts or something. I'm not sure what those are called. So to address these, I'm just going to remove all of them. So we have that blob of solder that would stop it from sliding through the little slot, and then they're also bent over. So I'll bend those 2 parts over, and then I cut like I said, I cut the solder bit off. So I should be able to just pull this straight through. And yeah, sure enough, that works fine. So I got those all out of the way. And then I try something really stupid, which is to drill these holes bigger so I can fit new RCA jacks in it. So I had the foresight to back them with a piece of wood, and luckily for me, I didn't just shatter this 50-year-old piece of plastic. I don't know what I was thinking to try to drill out with a very dull drill bit these holes. I should have just filed them bigger, and I had to do that anyways because they went everywhere. And luckily they have some washers on them so it covers up the damage, except for the one on the right, but that actually was already kind of broken, not by me. But yeah, I don't know what I was thinking trying to drill those out, but yeah, luckily I didn't just break this whole thing. So I got those new RCA jacks in and soldered on. Oh, and then this was pretty funny. When I was cleaning the motor, I noticed that this metal fan was actually balanced. And it just goes to show the attention to detail they put into this stuff, that they balanced the fan. And speaking of cleaning, I can actually start cleaning this thing now, because it seems to all be working. So piano keys were pretty filthy, and that goes along with the entire machine. This is the dirtiest thing I think I've ever tried to fix. It is just caked in years of dust. And on those piano keys, I also put some new lubricant on them, so they feel really good. But I'm going to start addressing the box it came with, because it is filthy. So I'm going to remove all of the hardware, and then I'm going to just clean that independently and polish it up with some Brasso, and then I'll put it back on. So you can see it's pretty corroded, some of this stuff. And then this back fan cover was actually really cracked up. I don't know if someone set this down on top of that fan cover and just put all of the weight on it, but I took all the little pieces and I used the soldering iron to just weld them all back together, and that actually worked pretty well. It's pretty solid. Now, I wouldn't put too much force under it, but it's, you know, at least it's there now, because before it was just held on by essentially 2 screws. So I'm taking the feet off, and I thought I would be lucky enough to not find a spider's nest in this thing, but fortunately I'm not that lucky, and I found a spider's nest inside this thing. I'm pretty sure that's what this is. That was just the web in there was so dense. But that was it. That was the extent of the spiders I found in this thing, besides a few miscellaneous cobwebs. So I'm dusting out the inside, and it's, yeah, even the inside of this thing is really dusty, and you can really see just how grimy this pleather top is. So I think, honestly, thinking back, I'm going to say 20% of my time was spent fixing the mechanics of this, and 80% was just cleaning it. It just needed so much scrubbing. I went through maybe a dozen rags cleaning this thing. So with that box cleaned, I'll assemble this back together, because there's a few things I want to address with it, but I want to be able to lay it on its back. So these VU meters, I want to be able to put that new foam in there. And I wasn't comfortable with laying it on its back because there wasn't really much chassis there. It was just that circuit board and like the fan motor that it would have ran into. So I waited till it was back in its box to do some of this stuff. So pinch that little light bulb holder together so it holds on a little tighter, and I'm replacing that old foam with just some weather stripping, and that seems to work actually really well. It's almost a perfect replacement for what was there. And then I can start cleaning the heads as well, so I can get a good look at it with the machine on its side. So the heads actually look really good. They're not very dirty. They don't look corroded. They actually look kind of weird. Almost like there's some kind of resin in them. I'm not sure. I've not seen heads like that before. And then this on the left is the sensing post, because this does have an automatic reverse, and it's via a metal piece of foil on the tape. So when it bridges across these 2 posts, it'll switch the direction and start playing the other side of the tape. And now I can clean the panel. So this panel doesn't look that dirty on camera, but it really was just disgusting. And it was actually kind of difficult to clean because it has that kind of texturing on it. So I had to use a toothbrush to really get in there and get that cleaned. And of course, the most important part, the tape head cover. And that polished up really nice, actually. So now that I have this tape head cover all cleaned up, I can finally start putting this thing fully back together, at least the main reel-to-reel player. I still need to clean the speakers, but we'll do that next. So just put the front panel back on, screw them down with the 4 screws, and then I just need to put these knobs back on. Just chromed plastic knobs, unfortunately. I think this is definitely made down to a price. They didn't go, you know, all out with metal knobs on everything. But we can now start fixing, or not even fixing, but cleaning the speakers. The speakers were fine. They were just kind of filthy. So start disassembling them. It has this panel on the back that I can take off, and then that reveals the inside of it. So we have 1 main woofer and then 1 tweeter in each speaker. So it's one of those oval ones. So it has a bunch of bolts in it. I think it's maybe 8 bolts, and then it has these 2 screws on the bottom. And that's what's holding in this cloth panel that has the speakers attached to it. So once I got that removed, I can just take this panel out and clean each piece separately. Now, I really love the cloth they used on the speaker grill. Now these boxes were really filthy, and this was the worst piece of damage on the whole machine. Was this speaker? The pleather had started to peel back. So I'm going to put some tape on there to make sure I don't get glue everywhere. And then I'm just going to put some glue down in there and use some tape just to hold it flat and clamp it down. So I'm using 1 piece for this left side and just carefully making sure I'm getting it nice and flat, just rolling it over. And to clean this grill, I'm just wiping it gently down with some lightly damp cloth. It's not really picking up much. I don't think I'm really doing too much to it, but I don't know of a better way to clean it. And while I was doing that, the glue dried up, and it actually that turned out like really well. You can see a little bit of a bubble, but that's really only noticeable in such a harsh light on this camera. And in real life, you can barely even tell that something was there. So with that all cleaned up, I can just put this all back together. So yeah, again, the cloth itself didn't need much cleaning. It didn't seem like it was dirty. It probably is absolutely filthy like old carpet, but I'm not going to risk destroying it trying to clean it any further. So I did this with each of the speakers and, you know, polished all the hardware as I did with the main device as well. And now I can just put it all back together. It was pretty straightforward to get this thing working again. Didn't have to get any new parts, no new belts, much to the probably chagrin of everyone watching. But it plays fine without it, so we'll give it a final real test. And as always, I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching. Okay, so I'm going to put this as an addendum to the video because I'm currently troubleshooting a problem that I'm now thinking is not actually a problem. And I want your guys' opinion on if this is supposed to be this way. So what's happening is the left channel audio gets a lot louder than the right channel audio. If I crank the left channel audio, because there's two separate volume knobs, this inner one is for the left channel, and this is also the power switch. And then this inner sleeve one is the right channel audio. And this doesn't have a power switch, it's just a plain potentiometer. So if I have that left one cranked all the way up in stereo, and I have the right knob cranked all the way up, and again, it's all in stereo, the left speaker is significantly louder. And it doesn't matter on the speakers. I have the line out going to an amplifier for these, and then I also just have the speakers it came with. It does it on both. It doesn't matter if I have an audio input that I'm just using as like a pass-through for like the monitoring, or if I'm actually playing tape on it, it'll always do it. So I thought maybe it was a problem with the heads. It's definitely not. It's definitely a potentiometer thing or maybe something else in this. But as I'm thinking about it, it's like, well, maybe it's not a problem. Maybe it's how it was designed, because in mono, so this switch goes between mono and stereo. So if you have it in mono, then the right channel knob just doesn't do anything anymore. All of your volume control is now in this left channel knob. And so my thought is like, maybe they put in a different type of potentiometer for the left channel versus the right channel, because if you have it in mono, that potentiometer is now, I guess, resisting the current for two sets of speakers instead of one. So it needs to be like it needs to be able to pass more current, otherwise it wouldn't be able to get loud enough. If that makes sense, that's the thought I'm having, and I want your guys' opinion if that's like a regular thing, because I've never seen that before. But this does have it does have an amplified signal going to speakers, and I've never messed with something that has that. So this has an amplifier built in. So maybe they did that on purpose, because I can get them to the same audio. Like if in stereo, I can get them equalized. I just have to have the knobs at two different places, which that doesn't seem right to me. But maybe that was a standard for this stuff back in the day. But yeah, if it's in mono, it's fine. They're both speakers will be the same volume, and I'm just controlling all of it through this one potentiometer. So I don't know. I'm curious about that. If you guys think it's a problem, I can keep looking into this. I messed with I cleaned all the pots, and they were obviously oxidized and crackly, but they're not crackly anymore. But they're still doing this offset thing. And I looked in the service manual. I couldn't find anything that was like how to change the balance. And maybe there isn't. And there's a lot of like adjustment pots in this that I messed with, and like changing them didn't change anything as far as I can tell. I just put them back to where they were, and I cleaned them, of course, with some deoxit. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a transistor capacitor issue. Again, I don't want to just keep digging into this and like inevitably breaking something else just to find out, oh, that's how it was designed. And I can't find the manual for this thing, so I can't see if it mentions that, like, oh yeah, these are going to be like different kinds of volume knobs, where one is like the left channel will be louder just because of how the mono stereo thing works. So yeah, I don't know. Let me know, but I thank you for watching, and have a nice day. I'm going to throw this in as a postscript. Addendum. I should not have used music in the outro in which it is like imitating a tape player being messed up. I swear it works fine. It's just the music I used is supposed to sound messed up. Anyways, thanks for making it this far, I guess. And yeah, I've told you thanks for watching enough.